you can't just say, okay, it's good if it's weak and it's bad if it's strong. I mean, it's a natural human tendency to want to be a part of a bigger tribe, something bigger than yourself, civilization even. And so it can't just be justified if people are not politically powerful.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to depend on the type of movement you're in and like where you're coming from. Like, because realistically, like when somebody says white pride, I don't really know like white people as a group historically. I don't like. It's hard to know what that means. Like, if you want to talk about like German people, Russian people, Irish people, like there are achievements and things that you can give to specific nationalities, specific ethnicities, things in the past. But it feels like when people talk about like white as an overarching group, at least in my mind, the only thing I think of is slavery, because I'm like, well, what did white people do versus like black people?
Or you think it's almost too generic and kind of
yeah, that's the issue. Like, and then when somebody appeals to
what does
something,
it mean? You go to Target as opposed to the dollar store. You're white or something.
Yeah,
you know, I agree with that.
Whereas I think and then there's a slight difference too, because when you talk about like African American culture, there was a unifying culture between descendants of slaves, because a lot of them can't even point back to the countries they're from. And so their culture basically starts at my great 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 granddaddy was a slave and that's all I have. And here's the culture that I was thrust into, that was thrust upon me. And then this is what we created out of that. And so I'm more sympathetic to, I understand why some people are like, I have African American pride, but it feels a little bit different. It's like, I have white pride. It's like, okay, well, you can go to Ellis Island, you can see like exactly where your family came from. Like your pride is going to be a little bit more ethnically precise than that. And when you say white pride, it feels a little bit strange, you know?
I get what you're saying, and I'm being sympathetic towards it. I have many of the same criticisms. One of the criticisms that I do agree with that you hear from the left is, you know, they'll show some image of some, you know, fatso screaming white pride or yelling at someone, and they'll be like, "This is the white supremacist," you know. And then there's also that other kind of question of like, what are you actually standing for? What do you want?
Yeah,
I think that was a major question, the why question about the alt-right and why it failed and is kind of part of the past now, is because it couldn't answer. There was no like actual spiritual core to what whiteness is.
Which
I think that's
so many
very true.
movements have that issue. Remember Occupy
Yeah.
Wall Street?
Yes.
What the fuck did they want? That was a huge fervor, and it came and it went, and like, what the fuck did you guys want? Or BLM and the riots and the police, like, what did you guys want? To abolish policing? They tried that as a place, it didn't work. Like, what did you guys want? The alt-right, Charlottesville, and everything. Well, what do you guys want? And it's like, more Christianity, Catholicism, not that. What more, like what? Like, yeah, there's an issue with a lot of misdirected anger today, where it's like, channel it on something and figure out a policy or something to rally by. Maybe legalize like marijuana or something, but find something that you want to champion.
Well,
otherwise,
that's because America isn't offering that anymore. So when you think about, okay, I mean, I'll do two things real quick. So just, you know, be a little patient. So there is a white identity to the United States that is, I would say, overwhelmingly Protestant and overwhelmingly Anglo, and there were a lot of nativist battles against, you know, bringing in Italians and Central Europeans and so on in the 19th century. Between about from the Immigration Act of 1924 and let's say up to the 60s, I think there, and this was also coming after the progressive reforms that did a lot of great things, in my opinion. But anyway, I think there was a pretty coherent white American public. It was perhaps fleeting. It was kind of more Christian than Protestant, more European than Anglo-Saxon, but it was a real thing. But I also think that like grasping onto that, holding on to it is kind of clinging to the past. I think we've moved beyond that period of time. It was a great time in many ways. It was a bad time if you were African American, or not so bad, but bad in many ways if you're
Chinese, or depending on where you were.
I get it. But it was something, and I think that was probably the essence of the "Make America Great Again" notion. It was about, again, going back to the past, rehearsing something. But I think the main thing is that America is not able to offer any overarching, coherent vision that's attractive, that's irrational even, that's exciting, Dionysian. And thus, we're kind of retreating into this like fragmented societies of BLM angst, alt-right angst, Fuentes Yay angst, screw the patriarchy angst. They're probably literally screwing the patriarchy. That's anyway.
I feel,
but because we're not offering anything. When John Winthrop, before he even set foot on the soil, he had an idea of what America was. It was this New Jerusalem concept. It was a highly fundamentalist, puritanical notion, one that I don't resonate with, to be honest, but it was something. He defined it even before he was here. We've had various ways in the Cold War. I mean, I have this article I'm going to publish, but it's about how U2 kind of predicted the Cold War or ended the Cold War in some crazy way. Though we're torn in two, we can be one. They sang that in 1983 before 1989, 91, and everything changed. And so they were imagining some vision that you wanted to come be a part of. And I think for Bono and U2 is actually deeply Christian. This is there has to be something there, or we are going to fragment into things like BLM and the alt-right.
So here, this is something also that I kind of think in terms of. So earlier, I alluded to this idea that I feel like the idea of a unified America was a bit illusory. I feel like we felt that way, or we feel like in the past it was that way. So Adam, when you talk about like hip hop and you talk about like rappers, I feel like one thing that's really important for a lot of these guys that a lot of kind of middle class America, and I feel like people have lost, is where you're from.
Oh yeah, huge.
Yeah, but I think that I feel like in the United States, I feel like we used to be a lot more local. But again, because of the internet, I think something happened to where now the only thing everybody knows Marjorie Taylor Greene. Everybody knows, like if you ask like a conservative in Wyoming or Montana or whatever, like which politician do you hate the most? They're going to talk to you about like people from the House of Representatives in New York.
Yes.
They're going to talk to you about people that have no impact on their lives whatsoever.
Right.
And I think that there's an illusion I think that's created in the past America where everybody's involved in their own communities and their own churches and their own unions and their own local politics scene. And you feel like you're kind of a unified America, even though this community and this community might feel totally about things, but in their own communities, they've achieved some sort of equilibrium where they feel comfortable and confident. But now, local politics, everybody's on this national level, and no way can you get 340 million people to all feel the same about anything.
But in a weird way, we all do feel the same. It's kind of both because, you know, like a rancher in Wyoming, because he's on social media to some degree, is going to be like, those BLM riots, they're burning down cities, like Antifa's coming from, and it's like, listen, let me, as someone who was assaulted by Antifa, I can tell you, like, they are not coming to rural Montana, like, just, you know, let you know.
But I mean, on that same thing, though,
we're brought together in this kind of incredible way.
Yeah, but in like but in a horrible way. Because the reality is that like, if you were to poll a ton, like, there's just something, oh my God, my mind, I changed so many opinions on politics when I realized this, is if you're trying to figure out what Americans feel like, first of all, get rid of the idea of Americans, number one. And number two, stop looking at national polling data, because we don't vote national at anything. We vote for our representatives, we vote for our senators, and then we vote within our states for things. And when you start looking more granularly at American opinion, you start to realize more why things are the way they are. You might think that like, well, 52% of Americans support the legalization of marijuana or prostitution or gun control or whatever. But when you look state by state, you're like, okay, hold on, this breaks down way differently depending on where you're looking at things.
But that's changing.
But we're trying to force.
Is happening.
It might be, but the problem is we're trying to force our national views on everything, where we still have a system, whether we like it or even acknowledge it, that still very much works on the local level. I think BLM and policing is a really good example. We tried to come together as a country and make strong statements on policing, but policing is decided by your mayor. These are your most local elections. Obama's not going to fucking save you from a bad cop. Trump's not going to do shit about an unfair prosecution. But we all are looking and obsessing at that national level, and then nobody looks at their local communities. And now we're like, well, I feel like we don't get along like we ever did before. It's like, I don't know if anybody from New York City in the year 1892 would have gotten along with somebody from, you know, some rural place, some rancher in Texas, but it felt like they did because they never talked to each other. They never had the opportunity to be exposed to each other.
Let me try to bring some of these things together, because you're bringing up some very important topics. So America has never been a coherent nation, and it's never been a nation state at all. It has always been an empire in some degree or another.
Sure.
So there's actually a thinker who's out of favor now, who I think is a genius, Frederick Jackson Turner, with this notion of the frontier. So in European languages, if you're, let's say, a Prussian and you have the word frontier, that means border. That means you've got to face off against the Russian Empire, France, some naval invasion, all that kind of stuff. In America, frontier means the opposite. It means endless open space.